When you think about working for the federal government, what comes to mind? Is it service members in the military?
We bring out the best in the people who serve.
Because America calls for nothing less.
So you can be all you can be.
It's a good guess. The Defense Department employs more than 2.1 million service members and over 770,000 civilian employees. But there's so much more. Across over 430 federal agencies, the hiring never stops.
The Federal Aviation Administration says it's received nearly 58,000 applications.
Right now, America is undertaking one of the biggest investments in transportation infrastructure in our history. And that means we're hiring here at the Department of Transportation.
To get started with your application to be a revenue agent, visit jobs.irs.gov.
Learn how you can make a difference. Visit gsa.gov/career.
Once new employees are onboarded, our government works hard to retain them. Those efforts include bringing to our federal workforce the right benefits, training, and employee knowledge. That effort is overseen by federal human capital officers. And today, we're fortunate to be joined by two of the best to learn how they're helping our country's civil servants shine.
I hope you'll consider becoming one of our colleagues here at the DOT.
This is Empathy Affect, the Forsmarsh Media podcast that explores the human side of government. I'm Melissa Harris-Szynski, and we have Internal Revenue Service Human Capital Officer Traci DiMartini and House of Representatives Chief Human Resources Officer John Salamone with us today. For over 2 decades, Traci and John have been driven to serve our country by advancing resources and programs to support federal workers. We'll get into the value of public service and learn how your government's HR teams will uplift you while you're uplifting our country. John, Traci, thank you for joining us on Empathy Effect today. It's really great to have both of you.
Thank you for having us, Melissa.
Yes, thank you, Melissa. This is really exciting.
Yeah, so we're so fortunate today to have both of you here, two people who have carved quite the path forward in federal HR over the last couple of decades. So, John, I understand that you've played a big role in establishing the groundwork in federal human capital as we know it today. So do you want to start by sharing some of the work you did in championing federal human capital reform?
Happy to have the opportunity to talk to you and Melissa, and to share today's podcast with my good friend Traci. I've had the distinct honor over my career to play different roles in human resources, and really took to the profession when I was working for Senator Voinovich. He was a stalwart and a champion of human capital reform in the federal government post 9/11. He's created the Chief Human Capital Officers Council and the position of the Chief Human Capital Officer in the executive branch. One of my good friends, Mike Davila, was the first executive director of the Chief Human Capital Officers Council. And I had the distinct honor and privilege of serving as the second executive director of the council and building on a lot of the good work that was foundational in the first year and a half or 2 years of the council and really elevating it to higher levels. So I had a privilege and pleasure going back to like the early 2000s and then making a career out of human capital really over the last 20 years, both in government at the House of Representatives and as a consultant in between my time at OPM and before coming to the House.
It's so great to hear John kind of mention someone as amazing as Senator Voinovich and also Senator Akaka, who was his strong partner. Both of them, a Republican and a Democrat, really understood the fundamental importance of human capital in the federal sector. And I was so fortunate to grow up, if you will, in a time where it was valued across both parts of Congress. And I followed John's footsteps. He was the second executive director of the Chico Council. The third woman was a woman named Catherine Medina, who I ended up being her deputy at OPM. And we were there during one of the many evolutions of hiring reform. But I've always had a passion for employees and workforce and how employees are treated. My background is actually in organized labor. I was a AFGE vice president for Local 12 at the Department of Labor before I moved into the management and HR ranks. And I just, like John, so passionately believe that really good federal human capital administration is central to having a strong civil service, but also strong employees that are empowered, trained, educated, held accountable.
Just like Traci said, good human capital uplifts both our government agencies and the people who serve within them. And I know the IRS and the House of Representatives have totally different missions and exist in separate branches of government. But each still needs a variety of people, roles, and functions to maintain to deliver on those missions. And the HR professionals like Traci and John are key to providing the right support. To get an idea, John shared a bit about the 800 people working under the Chief Administrator of the House.
The Chief Administrative Officer of the House, we're really looked at as the C-suite function for the House. We handle a lot of the, backroom operations, acquisition, finance, information technology. We have a logistics team. We have my HR team and a host of other services that we provide to help members perform their constitutional duties. So without our team, the individuals that work here, if the phones don't work, if the computers don't work, the members, the 435 members of Congress can't serve the 320 million or 330 million people that live in this country. And, our role here is to make sure that their offices are operational, that they have the furniture, that they have the equipment, that they have the computers, the phones, everything that they need to have an operational organization. And that's not just here in DC. We provide the backbone for information technology, the phone systems for the DC and the 900 plus district offices that are across the country. We have skilled tradesmen and women that build custom furniture for members of Congress. We have skilled tradesmen and women that help with the logistics of moving members that are departing Congress out of their offices and then moving members in, a very orchestrated process that happens during the congressional transition every 2 years. And then everything in between, from payroll and benefits to the budget of the institution.
I hope you're getting a sense of the many, many professions involved in government and pathways involved in making our government's institutions serve the public. This is certainly true at the IRS too, which has been tasked with the ambitious goal of recruiting 20,000 employees in fiscal year 2024. The positions span across customer service, taxpayer advisory services, and more. While 20,000 is a daunting number, Traci's pretty optimistic about how the hiring journey's going.
We are on a very successful journey. It's such a privilege to work for an agency that has the financial wherewithal to start really demonstrating what can happen when an agency has what it needs to transform and to make a difference. And one of the things I've been most proud of is all the hiring we are doing at the IRS. And much like John described, it's not just for accountants, which I think a lot of people automatically think about with the IRS, but it is for people that maintain our buildings, for customer service representatives, for the frontline staff that deal with the taxpayers and try and provide the best possible service at our walk-in centers, all the way down the line for our information technologists that are trying to modernize our systems, make sure they're more efficient, they're always properly safeguarded. And people like HR, which is doing our best to hire those on the front line, but not just hire them, but make sure that we are retaining them through things such as continuous learning, benefits that we can offer when we have the ability, such as student loan repayment or tuition assistance programs, making sure that we are keeping an eye on our strong relationship with the National Treasury Employees Union to make sure we're getting good information from them on how we can best serve employees. Because at the end of the day, I know that our agency works best when we have a fully staffed organization. But beyond that, also making sure that my team in Human Capital Office is doing our best to take care of that workforce. at the IRS, we are very close to hitting the 100,000 employee mark. I'm hoping we are able to hit it by the end of this fiscal year. We have lots of hiring that is ongoing all the time, doing virtual and in-person events. We are doing our best to make sure people know they can come here and have careers and they will be supported. And I really have to give a shout out to the workforce that's been with us for many years through times where we didn't have the funds to maybe hire people, and they still kept the lights on and the tax returns process. And one thing that I didn't really appreciate till I got here, all the extra work that agencies do, again, whether they be legislative, judicial, or executive, that people don't know about, because, it was the IRS that jumped in during the COVID crisis to help process those COVID payments that were sent out while also processing tax returns and doing it all in the middle of a major pandemic and health crisis. And when you see what is possible when you treat your employees well and take care of them, it just goes to show you that the heartbeat of any organization, private or public sector, is the workforce.
Yeah, and I feel like each of you are just coming to these questions and dropping the mic. So good. So I want to now turn to John to also talk about big initiatives this year. The IRS is undergoing its fiscal year 2024 recruiting initiative, but this year we are facing a major election in November. And with that, we may see many newly elected representatives in the House. So can you walk me and our listeners through how you prepare the House through election cycles and what you're doing this year to prepare to ensure that our legislators are properly staffed?
Great question. And yes, every 2 years, 100% of the House is up for reelection. So, the turnover in the institution can range from anywhere from 60 new members all the way up to well over 100 new members. So 2.5 months out right now, we know that there are at least 60 plus members that will not be returning. And each office hires up to 18 employees. So we have literally hundreds, if not thousands of staff that will be transitioning in and out of the institution over the coming months. The CAO organization writ large plays a huge role in the transition. I already alluded to some of the orchestrated movements that we have with all of the furniture and office moves and telecommunications upgrades and computer moves and everything associated with transition. But we also run and play a huge part in partnership with the Committee on House Administration, new member orientation, which is 2 weeks of the members elect coming in and spending time in DC in November. My team in particular, we will be playing a role to help the new members with some recruiting and hiring resources. The important thing to keep in mind is, we have 435 members of Congress, 5 delegates, and over 20 committees. They are their own employing authority. So even though my team offers services to them, we are really in an advisory capacity trying to provide best practices, information, resources that will help them staff up their offices so they can be ready on day one. In particular, the Select Committee on Modernization of Congress asked us a couple years ago to stand up an HR hub of best practices for member offices. That resource just reached its 3rd anniversary, and we've had tens of thousands of hits to that site by over 7,000 unique users. We will create a special page for incoming members elect on dedicated hiring resources, best practices for hiring for them. We also modernized the new member resume bank during the last congressional transition, where we leveraged the CAO's applicant tracking system, and we set up 90 individual instances of job pages basically for new members coming in, where there were 14 jobs posted over the course of the time that we had that site live, from just after the election through March of the following year. We had over 18,000 resumes come in to that resume bank. So in a very short period of time, we know that members use that to staff up their offices. We know that they We'll leverage those resources. And then when we turn that service off, they can still access the house resume bank that we utilize. And we've had hundreds of requests and have provided thousands of resumes to member offices through that service as well. So there will be a lot of activity going on to support the congressional transition from across the Chief Administrative Officer of the House, and then more in particular, my team providing those services in addition to resume reviews, mock interviews for staff that are going to be looking for jobs for those member offices that are departing. So we'll be really busy between now and January for sure.
I'm sure you will. And it's really cool to get that kind of insight. I feel like, again, it's something we take for granted. We elect the people into office, but then we don't see all of the action behind making sure that they're staffed up and have the teams they need to succeed and serve our country. Before, Traci was talking about making sure that we have the right support to be able to ensure that our federal employees thrive. And I can't help but mention that, the job market has felt really competitive in recent years. People are searching for better compensation and benefits, and, inflation has been a big challenge for folks. So how have each of you tried to keep your organizations competitive in this job market and recruit the high demand talent that you need?
I think from my lens, it really is starting with the idea of trying to talk to people that already have it in their head that they want to serve the federal government. You're right about compensation. Neither branch of government, none of the branches of government have been known to offer salaries that can compete with the private sector. And maybe there could be a discussion about whether or not we should compete with them. Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure we're attracting individuals that want to come in and serve. And we certainly give them enough reasons to want to be here. Because as I often talk to people that join the service in later parts of their career, they will tell me maybe they made more money in the private sector, but they didn't find a position as meaningful as they could in the federal service, because they know they're working for agencies with very specific and ambitious missions. They know that they're making meaningful contributions during their workday, solving really difficult problems, and doing it with people that have a passion for federal service. So I often hear how hard it is to get a federal job. And I can say on some lens that is a good thing, because that means we are still attracting large numbers of people that want to come and serve. At any given time, when we post an announcement on USA Jobs, we could get thousands of applications within the span of a week or two. Now, we certainly could do and should do a better job of timeliness and making sure we're doing a better job keeping applicants informed. And I say that's always a work in progress as we get the technology to help us do a better job of that, make sure that we have the ability to reach out and do some targeted recruiting so people that have the skills that we're looking for know we're seeking them out. But it all, to me, comes down to making sure we start with service. Do you want to serve the government? And again, in any capacity at any of the branches, because those are the individuals that are going to freely choose to come into jobs that may not always, pay as much as, say, Google or Amazon or other large corporations, but they do give you something that you can't find in other places. They give you the idea that you are serving your government, that you are serving with purpose, that you're supporting really critical missions and providing services to your fellow American. And that's what I think we really need to focus on is public service, because we have found through recruiting, we get so many people, again, that transition in the military. They want to continue their public service. Maybe they're ending their career in the military, but they still want to serve. Or at one point in my career, I worked for the Peace Corps. So many people that have a passion for international development and working in different areas in a volunteer capacity, or places like AmeriCorps, I call it the domestic Peace Corps. People that do that volunteer service and then want to make a career of it, there are so many of them out there. And to all of them, I would say, please come and work for us now at some iteration, whether you're at the beginning of your career, the end of your career, or even in the middle, and you just want to do something different and learn more. We have places for everyone in the federal service.
I could not agree more and couldn't say it better. I think from my standpoint, we want to bring in employees that have that public service orientation, that want to serve the institution of the House, that want to be here to do good work for the American people and making sure that we're helping members of Congress so they can perform their constitutional duties. There's nothing more important than that. And from my standpoint, we want individuals and employees that are going to come in and have a deep and rich appreciation for government service. And I think, we're able to recruit for that. Traci may be a little bit jealous, I think, when I say this, but we have a lot more flexibility in the legislative branch to hire than she may have in the executive branch. We will take a resume and a cover letter, and we will immediately start interviewing, either, through phone screens and then panel interviews. And so we can be a lot more nimble in our hiring process than can be in the executive branch. So we try to leverage that to our advantage. But Traci talked about this as well. I mean, the portability. I'm a prime example of going from a Senate district office to a Senate DC office to the executive branch, back to the Senate, back to the executive branch, private sector, back to the legislative branch, and we want those experiences. We want individuals to go from one branch to the next branch and maybe go to the private sector and come back. We have portable benefits that will travel with employees, that will be there if they leave and come back. And those are the things that we're looking for. Get those outside experiences, come back and benefit the government. I knew that I was a much better oversight staffer in the Senate because I worked at OPM, and I know that I benefited from that. The other thing that we do in the House to help prepare in the CAO administration or CAO organization to help prepare our team beyond the nimble recruiting and hiring process, we have a relatively low turnover, but we also have a very structured workforce planning process where we meet with, my team meets with my counterparts, all of the C-suite chiefs, on a monthly basis to talk about the recruiting and hiring needs, immediate and longer term. And we're also balancing those practices with a really good succession planning efforts, recognizing that we have, high eligibility in retirement as the executive branch does. So we want to make sure that we are planning for the future so we can bring that next generation of talent in, whether that's entry, mid, or senior level employees. We're always looking to expand our talent pool by recruiting in ways that are, I hope, innovative and allow us to reach wider audiences and wider applicant pools.
Beyond recruiting, just looking at retainment, what initiatives are you two implementing to retain top performers? How have you been working on career development, work-life balance, maybe other employee feedback mechanisms that help you keep your best performers with your organization?
So I have to tell you, one of my most favorite activities as the HCO is collecting employee feedback and then, most importantly, taking action on it. So I'm a huge champion of the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, which comes out every year. But we also do quite a bit of pulse surveys or focus groups within the IRS to make sure that we are getting real-time information. I also have developed a very strong working relationship with our partners at the National Treasury Employees Union because their chapter presidents and stewards can feed me information from the campuses, from our regional offices that I may not always have ready access to since my particular office sits in DC. But conversely, that also means I like to spend a lot of time out in the field just talking to employees. So we do all of that to collect the information to either validate some inklings that we have. Maybe it's a particular office that needs more staff because we're seeing productivity really skyrocketing, or we're noticing higher than usual turnover at a particular location. So maybe we can come in and do some just-in-time assistance, whether it be management training or making sure they have the resources available. It's one of those parts of the job that is actually one of the most challenging, and it takes the most energy, but it's also the most rewarding. Because I have found that it doesn't do me any good to sit here and just assume I know what the workforce needs or wants. I need to actually get out there and solicit that information from multiple points of contact. You know, obviously I serve the commissioner and making sure that I'm taking his vision and implementing it, but listening also to the people that are on the ground doing the work. And if they say to me, hey, Traci, we actually don't need X, we need Y. Can you help us get that so we can be better performers or answer the phones faster or serve the customers better? It is a privilege to have that ability to say, yes, let me lean in and help. But it is a process that never ends because you always have to keep your eye on the trends and making sure that you're being as responsive as possible, because that also builds trust. And I would love to hear John's take on this, but nothing makes me sadder as a human capital practitioner to hear people say, well, HR is not out for me. You only care about management, not employees. Or, managers say to me, Traci, you only care about the union, not us. I care about everyone, because at the end of the day, having a strong workforce across all levels helps the organization thrive. And that means we can never rest. We have to always think about what's happening now, but also what's coming down the pike. Because John mentioned, all of us know we're facing possible retirement tsunamis. I've heard that phrase for the last 10 years. It hasn't yet materialized, but we do know actually the entire workforce is an aging workforce, not just in the public sector. And we want to make sure that we have people that are ready to take on those more senior level jobs and make sure that we're filling the pipeline with entry level talent that will come in and learn the jobs and be ready to ascend the ranks. At the same time, I want to make sure that my workforce that's been in place for a while feels valued and knows that I need them here to pass that knowledge on to the future workforce, because everyone plays an important role in succession planning. And we really need to do a better job, I think, of explaining what everyone's role is and why we can still do it as a team. And we don't just need to do it in segments. It's something that is continuous. It needs to have a lot of care and feeding at all times. And yes, it's a big investment, but it is the most important investment I think any organization could make.
Again, great answer and really on point on so many levels. And I think, from our standpoint, I couldn't agree more with Traci in terms of, we care about the entire workforce. That's managers and that's employees, supervisors, executives. Any element of the workforce, is important to us because, employees and leaders working together execute our mission to support the members of this institution. And one of the things that I've been most proud of is the fact, I've been in the role for 8 years, and I don't know where the time goes, but I've been able to, lead a team that's experienced tremendous growth. When I was hired, the HR team, we had about 19 people. We now have 50 on our team. And I think a lot of that stems from what Senator Voinovich used to tell us all the time is, do the doable. And I knew coming in, we wanted to lay down a huge strategy to transform our HR team, but we couldn't do everything at once. So what we did was we rolled out a new performance management system and process for our organization. That led to some success. I was able to get some momentum. I was able to build the business case to bring in some outside help to help us build a human capital program. We now have competency models. We have competency-based training for our workforce. We have an interactive and dynamic career development program and site that has interactive career paths. Gartner actually wrote a case study about our career development program, which is really unheard of. Gartner doesn't write a lot of case studies on government organizations, and we're really proud of the career development activities that we have. We have a year-long onboarding and orientation program. So all of these programs are designed to help not only attract talent, but retain the talent that we have. And like Traci, we have our own employee engagement survey. We don't have the same questions that OPM uses in FEVS.
FEVS being the Federal Employment Viewpoint Survey.
But we do have a subset of them that are the same. We have 15 questions in our employee engagement survey that are benchmarked to FEVS. And I can tell you in all 15 of those response rates, we outperform the government-wide averages in all 15. When we look at the small agency results, we outperform the government small agency, which is 1,000 employees or less, in 13 of the 15. So we're doing everything we can to build an engaging workforce, not only on the recruiting and hiring standpoint and career development standpoint, but on my team, we also run the House Employee Assistance Program and have been mandated within the last 5 years to stand up the House Center for Wellbeing. So we also run a well-being program for the institution that provides all kinds of services. We have fitness challenges. We have a lot of wonderful apps for staff that they can utilize in terms of looking at their financial well-being, looking at mental health well-being. The Calm app is one of the biggest apps that we have utilized here in the institution. And so I think from my standpoint, it's not only recruiting and hiring, but it's what are the services that we provide to our CAO staff through career development, career pathing, and the momentum that we gained really caught the attention of the Modernization Committee. We now on our HR hub have interactive and dynamic career paths for member office staff and committee staff. And I can say with a high degree of certainty that there is no legislative body in the world that has the tools that we've been able to deploy here at this institution for the staff that serve the members and the committees. And it is something that I am incredibly proud of and energized by, and what keeps me here on a day-to-day basis. And that passion that I have for it, I hope it permeates the team and that they carry forth in our mission to continue to serve the institution.
Since I'm hearing so much passion about the commitment you've had in your roles to public service, since each of you are in positions of public service, for listeners who are perhaps considering career pathways in civil service or in government, I'd love to hear a little bit about what got you interested in working at the IRS and the House, respectively, and what have been some of the most rewarding parts about your work? What keeps you motivated to keep doing what you're doing?
Oh boy, I love it. I love my job, and I've loved every job that I've had in public service. There's something very admirable. I think there's something very noble about serving our country. There's something for me that's very motivating. What's been most rewarding and most exciting, going back to even working, at OPM on 9/11 and seeing the Pentagon burn before it was reported on the news, but, to come into work the next day and to find ways that we can serve our country in times that were arguably some of the most challenging that we've had in our nation's history. And to forward that to today and knowing what I've been able to do over the last 20 to 30 years in my government career, I'm honored. And it's something that I will take with me wherever I go. One of the things that I love the most about my job is that I will meet with every single CAO staff whenever we have an onboarding and orientation and session. And sometimes it's weekly and sometimes it's, once a month. It just depends on how many staff that we're bringing in. But I will meet with every single staffer. I will have their resume. I will write notes on their resume. I will talk about the jobs that they have. And I will talk about the positions that they've held in the past and how it relates to the work that they're doing. The last thing that I always say to the team is I will talk about their job title. And in some instances, again, we're a pretty lean organization. So in some instances, we may be hiring somebody where they have the only job title in our organization out of 800 people. And what I try to do is contextualize that for them. And so I always talk about the size of our nation. Okay, we have 330 million people that live in the United States. We have 435 representatives serving those citizens. We have 2 million civilian federal employees. So out of a nation of 330 million, we have 2 million civilian federal employees. The House, we have about 12,000 employees. CAO organization, we have about 800 employees. So in some instances, what I will say to a staffer is, out of a nation of 330 million people, you are the only person in the United States of America that gets to say that you are performing the duties of your role here at the House of Representatives. And I can tell you that I get, feedback, indirect feedback, direct feedback, that means a lot to our employees. And I love spending that time with our new employees because I want them to know how passionate I am and what an honor it is for them to serve this institution. And certainly that's one of the things that I find most rewarding and one of the things that I enjoy most about the job and look forward to doing this for, many months and years to come, hopefully.
Now I'm ready to apply for a job to work for John.
I always do. I want to. It's fun over here, Traci.
I know. So much of what John says does strike a chord with me too. And I'm at a point in my career where I do reflect back thinking, what do I want to do next? Where have I come from? What have I done? If you would have told me 18 months ago I'd be sitting here as the human capital officer for the IRS, I would have laughed because I had no idea that this opportunity would come my way. But very much like what John said, I know what a privilege it is to say, I spent time in the seat helping to recruit and retain and train people that are serving every American taxpayer. And I love the fact that John also talks about, it's reminding people what a privilege it is to actually say you are a public servant. One of my favorite things to do when I have the opportunity is to go out to our recruitment events. And one of the things that people forget is so many civil servants actually do not live in the Washington, D.C. area. I think the last statistic I saw was 85% of the executive branch civil servants are actually spread all across the world because we have civilians that are working at, say, military installations or other parts of the globe. But when you go to recruiting events and people know that they're getting the opportunity to serve their government and to enter into federal service, and maybe they're living in an area where jobs are not plentiful, so they know how important it is for this opportunity can be life-changing, or that they've always had a passion, say, for the environment and they're hired by the Forest Service or EPA, or they want to be a firefighter and they're picked up by USDA's Forest Service. People are excited about getting to see their dreams come true. And I think that is such a privilege in doing human capital for the government. We are changing lives. And not only are we changing lives for the people we hire, but I think about how they will serve the people that depend on us. And John mentioned 9/11. I wasn't yet a civil servant in 9/11, but I was here for things like the pandemic, when you really saw how people during a time of great uncertainty still rallied together to make sure, Social Security checks were issued, tax returns were processed. Any emergency aid that needed to go out, the government was able to deliver because of the strong civil service it has built. And it really is exciting to see the pride that people take, whether it be at the end of a filing season that is successful, or for HR, after we close out a performance year, or my friends in procurement at the end of a fiscal year. People know that what they do matters. And that's why I always make it a practice too, to tell people thank you. Like, they don't hear that enough. A lot of times federal employees and legislative employees are beat up on. People think that we're useless. They don't appreciate what we do. They don't know what we do. And that's why I think it's so important for folks like me and John, who sit in the leadership chairs of human capital, to say to them, actually, what you do is incredibly important. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for choosing to work for the federal government, for the House of Representatives, for the judicial branch. We need you because that's what makes our institutions work. And that it really is the best of what this country has to offer. And that's really just where the excitement and the passion that you've been hearing, Melissa, comes in. John and I know how lucky we are, and we hope that we can get everyone excited about public service and get them to understand that no matter what their title is, no matter what agency or institution they work for, the work they do matters.
The work of our civil servants is certainly important, and it's been great to hear from both of you about the care, passion, and initiatives you put into helping federal employees succeed. It was great learning from both of you today, so thank you again for sharing a bit about the very important work you do.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you again to Traci and John for sharing more about the strides that they're making to support our federal workers and institutions. If you were inspired by our conversation and want to see if you can expand your career into federal service, we'll link to USA Jobs in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow, subscribe, and share the show with a friend. And don't forget to rate us on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for tuning into Empathy Affect, and I hope you'll join us next time.
Empathy Effect is a product of Forrest Marsh. You can reach us at forrestmarshmedia@forrestmarsh.com with any feedback, questions, or inquiries. If you want to know more about today's guest, are interested in participating with Forrest Marsh, or becoming part of our community, check out our show notes for more information.